is any question about it. You take that little bitty perennial spade or shovel that you have, or hand trowel, just kick some mulch aside, go down in that top 1 inch of soil. If there is no moisture, it's due for watering. If there is moisture, you kick the mulch back in place, literally, because by then you're ready to head back to the house, kick it back in place, and you leave it alone until the next inspection. Some people do not bother to water all winter long. Their plants still live. I like to go for a little bit safer factor, for no longer than it takes, and water those more vulnerable things.
And you're listening to a special Thanksgiving weekend edition of Plant Talk. We'll be back in just a moment with one of the, more popular questions that we have here on the program.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Welcome its tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
And welcome back to our special Turkey Day edition of Plant Talk, where we're really happy that you joined us this Saturday morning. Fred Howard, the Ohio nurseryman, of course, and I'm Mark News sitting alongside. And Fred, one of the more popular questions we have, especially this time of year, is winter care for the so-called Zone 6 plants. Mm-hmm. Plants that really aren't made for our central Ohio winters, but boy, they're beautiful. You take care of them, and you can have a spectacular spring and summer.
This is true, Mark, and everybody that is into gardening and beyond the novice stage, and even some novices that have made a mistake and gotten the wrong plant. Then the rest of us reach out a little bit to pick up a different color, flowering time, etc. We have to deal with plants that are growing in Zone 6, which is now from, the lower third of Ohio, and it depends on who you argue with again, but the lower third of Ohio, down around the river, and then on south, gets into Zone 6, Zone 7, Zone 8. By the time you're down in the Keys of Florida, you're into the teens. All of that means days, length, and depth of freeze. Mm-hmm. Now, from there, then, we have hydrangeas that are quite capable as a plant to grow in Zone 5. They're capable of growing in Zone 4, clear up around Lansing, Michigan, and on north, and Saginaw, etc. But the flower buds are not hardy. Only the leaf buds are. The stem's good, the root's good, and so on. So we have this variation on a theme. And we get many questions during the course of a year. Why didn't my hydrangeas bloom? And my spontaneous answer, right or wrong, is they may have lost their flower buds. Well, let's just go with the fact that right now, to my knowledge, in most areas of Ohio, there has not been a significant depth or length of freeze to have killed flower buds, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So we can still take our chicken wire, rabbit cloth, whatever you want to call it. We can take wood stakes, metal stakes, whatever, go out around a hydrangea with a piece of twine. Tie it up. Now, not tight. Don't break the branches while they're bone frozen cold. You might wait till afternoon to do this. But just bunch up the branches a little bit. Build a silo, if you will. Put 3 or 4 stakes in the ground. Put the chicken wire around the outside of that. Secure it with a piece of twine. Then take any good loose mulch, be it straw, your oak leaves, something out of the compost pile, even to a certain extent, when we come to roses here in a minute, with just plain old garden soil. Mm-hmm. And fill this silo. Now, you don't try to packet stuff down tight. You're looking for, again, this business of dead air space, the area between particles of whatever it is, to be the softener of the freeze-thaw cycle. We don't keep plants warm. We simply break up that cycle so that they can protect themselves, really. A hydrangea that is given this kind of protection will be much, much more likely to bloom. Now, will I guarantee it? Absolutely not, because there's hydrangeas that just won't make it here. They're beautiful when they're grown by the professional, and we'll go on from there and leave the professionals off because it's the people's choice. But in any event, you can protect a hydrangea to a considerable extent by loosely putting I'm going to call it debris, any loose organic matter that you have, right on through straw down in there, and just slow down the freeze-thaw. You'll also keep that plant, so to speak, in the dark so that the sun won't hit it. And the sun then, even all disregarding the air temperatures, there won't be this penetration cold to hot. And you'll find then that you're going to have a lot better chance of that hydrangea flower bud coming on through the winter. There is even reason to consider covering certain azaleas. Now, azaleas and rhododendrons are pretty hardy plants when it comes to the zonal factors. But in that there is often a case of not having enough acidity in this soil, not enough this, that, and the next thing, that they don't get a good summer's growth. And my common statement, and I've used it many, many times, almost ad nauseum, is a good summer's growth is the best winter protection for any plant. Well, an azalea or rhododendron maybe didn't get that. So I would put them in that category of caging them, if you will. Putting a burlap wrap around them. I saw some just the other day. They're not pretty, but I know what's under them is going to live into next summer because I've seen this house before, and the plants are beautiful. So anything that protects against the rapid freeze and thaw on hydrangeas and et cetera, and including the azaleas and rhododendrons. Then we come to roses. A little bit of a different story. A rose, in the most part, the things that we're interested in, except for climbers, but even including them, you put mulch of your choice in the center of the plant. You let it pile up to 18, 24 inches even. Then it will form a kind of a pyramid in there. That will then also settle 6, 8, 10 inches. But in the meantime, you have protected not only the root zone, which we've talked about, but you're protecting what I call the bud tissue on that rose that may not be as hardy in our zone 5 or 6 areas. And when you pull the mulch back roughly, March 15th, April 1, you'll have live tissue. Now, it may have died down into the mound a little bit. You cut that off. You cut back then to living tissue with buds on it. Cut that, clean it up, and on you go into the next year of roses. So the mulching in them is called hilling. Well, healing is sometimes different, but it boils down to protection. And yet, if you're down to where I am now with a shadier yard, I have only about 8 or 9 total roses. Some of them are tough as nails. I don't bother anymore. If I lose one, I need a different color in that spot next year anyhow. But at $20 a piece, you don't want to have too many of those go that way.
That's right, absolutely. What about these cones and things that you can buy?
Mark, they're available. I have seen good and bad luck. I've talked to rosarians, and these are serious people now, who have 300 to 500 roses. Some are in favor, some are not. By all means, if you do use the cones, you're going to have to tie up the rose a little bit, so do it on a day when they're not brittle. You're going to have to cut portholes in that so that the air can exchange from cold so on. The cone is doing the same thing mulches will do in terms of stopping the fast freeze-thaw. They look like the dickens in your yard. However, if you have a prized rose, old family rose, or, as I say, a $20, $25, $30 plant, or one that's particularly good bearing, you don't want to take a chance on it. So I'd say the cones are okay. If I were to make them, though, I'd make them out of green styrofoam. So I can't speak too highly for them, but I'm not opposed to them either.
And just quickly, when you're hilling the roses, do you wait to trim them in the spring, or do you trim them up a little bit first?
Excellent question, and you're going to get varied answers. Mine is that I like to wait and do all finish pruning at least in the spring. Now, if I have a loose, floppy top on a rose and wind is going to whip it and crack it, break it, then I'm going to cut back a little bit. I'm going to tie some of those twine, or just a loose twine around those and stabilize them. But I leave the final pruning, per se, until spring. So I would say you can go ahead and prune now, for sure, because the plants are totally dormant. Earlier would have been a mistake because a rose can be pushed back into growth so it doesn't, so to speak, winterize inside on its own. So right now you can go ahead and prune if you wish, but you're going to have to do some more in spring, so I only like to bend down once.
Well, Fred wants to get you some exercise after eating all that turkey, so his to-do list coming up next on Plant Talk.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Welcome its tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
The first thing to do is enjoy our bounty, and I'm serious about that. Most of the people in our listener area are not starving, and that's good. Let's just say that enough said about that. And yet we should all bless our bounty and look back to our forefathers who had some really tough times when they first got here. Obviously enough survived that we are now here 300 million strong. Some of those are going to be starving. So let's just count our blessings personally, think of those that are less fortunate, but then we move on into gardening things. To get some exercise, you may indeed, Mark, have to still mow. Set the mower down to 2.5 inches at least, and 2 if you wish. before you mow or along with mowing or letting the mower do it, if you have a bagger on it, and I'd recommend that, rake, so to speak, or groom up, get the extra leaves off, because by now your neighbors that they didn't clean up so carefully have blown into your yard, and I always use that excuse, but some of them look an awful lot like the leaves off of my trees. In any event, get the raking up done so that that does not mat down and cause the grass to fold over itself, because again, you can create some snow mold circumstances. Finish that mulching. Whatever it may be, anything you know to have been tender in the past. Sometimes it's just a matter of building a barrier with stakes and burlap so that the wind and sun don't hit things. You don't even have to fill the area. Whatever it may take for mulching your particular known needs. Then continue the garden cleanup. I'm just about done gardening at this point in time, but there are still a few things that look pretty ugly. Some of the dead, mushy tops on hostas and things still need to be groomed up. Get that done. You can still prep the soil on drier days for spring gardening and clean up and store those tools and enjoy the holidays.
And thank you very much for joining us on our special Thanksgiving weekend edition of Plant Talk. Your questions for Fred, again, coming up next week. We look forward to seeing you here on Plant Talk with Fred Howard, the Ohio nurseryman. Thanks for joining us.
Plant Talk is sponsored by Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, fpconservatory.org. If you have a question for Fred for a future show, go to our Facebook page and ask away. We value your comments about the show, so please tell us what you think by writing a review on iTunes. This helps others find out about Plant Talk. You can find out more about Plant Talk on our website at planttalkradio.com.